Hey everyone, it's Linda with Embroidery Legacy. In this Font Magic video, I'm going to show you how to layer Flexi Fill and regular fonts to make bold statements using outlines and offsets. Come on, let's get started. All right, let's start layering up our text to create this fun cutout design. For this background, we will be using the 3D College Flexi Fill font. And John has invented the Flexi Fills, and he always puts an FF after their name. He doesn't give you a size requirement because these can be going large or small, and you can get super creative with them. So I'm going to select this font, and we will bring it in at 90 millimeters, and I will type in 2024. And I want to also change the overall size. So I'm going to unlock the proportional scaling. Notice the lock is unlocked now. I'm going to change the height to 100, and I will change the width to 170 so it will fit my hoop. Now we're ready to start having a little fun. Notice that these are just one object. It's a 2, a 0, a 2, and a 4. There are no separate individual objects. It comes in looking like a satin stitch. This would never stitch out on your machine, but this is how John has developed these fonts, that they can come in as a satin stitch, but you need to either change them to a fill stitch, and I will in this tatami, and then we're going to break them apart so that you can access the object's properties and really have some fun changing these around. So I have the tatami set, and I'm also going to come over, I'm going to click on objects, and I'm going to start breaking this apart. So I'm going to come over to edit objects, and when you break it apart, that, like I said, that allows you to utilize the object properties. And I'm going to go back to color because it just makes it a little faster when you're breaking objects apart to know that you've actually broken them completely apart. And you want to do this until break apart is completely grayed out. So next we come over to create layouts option, and we will start with our satin stitch going around the numbers. So I'm going to turn off outlines. I'm going to put an offset on. I'm going to have it at 3 millimeters, and we'll change this to a satin stitch right there. I want to include holes, and because there are sharp lines on this number, I'm going to use this one where it says sharp corners. So you get nice crisp sharp corners versus if we'd used rounded corners. So it depends on the text you're using. So just always know how to use the different tools and what they're meant to do. So I'm going to click OK on that, and we now will have the outline going around our numbers. I'm going to move this forward in just a little bit. I'm just dragging my cursor over everything, and I'm just going to use my over arrow just to nudge this over just a little bit. I'm going to change the width on my satin stitch to 2.25. And notice when I do that, and I'll just zoom in a bit, this gets too heavy. So we can come under edit objects, and we don't want to totally remove this little satin marking because it does delineate the number, but I want to just go back and change the width. So we'll do 1.75, and I'm going to hit the reshape button H on my keyboard and just drag this up just ever so slightly. So when you play with the software and you know how to use it, you can make these minor adjustments, but to your eye it will be very noticeable that this is just a slightly narrower width than the outside width. I also want to come under and select all of the satin, and I want to remove the underlay. I do not want any underlay on the satin stitching at this time because we will be actually cutting through it, and it is much easier when we remove the underlay from the beginning. So next we need to add the class of. So we will go back to our lettering tab, and this time we're going to use the Just B font. Got Just B right here. We'll bring this font in at 45 millimeters. And depending on the size and design you want to go, again, it's a matter of just experimenting and playing with it because each text grouping is going to look different, and depending on how large you want to put on a sweatshirt. So I'm going to type in class of, and that's blue. Let's just change that to green so we can see it. I'm also going to move this up here because I want to make a few adjustments to this. We want the class of so that the letters are closer together. So it's still selected, and if I come down under advanced, the letter spacing based on this particular font is 4.5. I'm just going to type in 0, and it should move the letters closer together, which it does. And I also now want to fine tune this a bit and move the of closer to the class. So we'll type H on the keyboard, and I will right click above the O, and it will automatically select all letters to the right of it. So it picked up the F, so I can just drag both of these over at the same time. I'd like to make my C a little bit larger so it stands out. So if I left click on that diamond, it will turn purple, and it means I only selected the C. It did not select everything else. So left clicking on it only selects one letter. And I'm going to drag this up till it's about 81 or so millimeters. And then I want to move it below the baseline. This is considered baseline where all the letters sit. If I hold down the control key, left click on the C, I can move it anywhere I'd like, and I'm just going to drop it down just a little bit. So that looks how I would like it. I'm going to select the text now. I'll just nudge it up just ever so slightly. And we'll go back to the create outlines and offsets. This time I want a 3mm offset, and I want it in a run stitch. Single run. I don't want it to include holes. I do want the rounded corners, and we need to change the color just so it stands out. And notice how the offset went all the way around. There's also a little stray offset piece. I'm just going to simply delete that because we don't need it. I will then move this offset up one spot so it sits behind the class, and we will change it to a fill. We will select both and move them down, just dragging them down over the class, or the numbers, into position that you'd like. So this is just a matter of playing with it a little bit and looking at what any kind of adjustments that you need to make. So I'm going to move this down a little bit more. And notice like I've got this offset on top of the satin stitch. This will make this really wonky when we go to cut it away, so I'm just going to then move this up ever so slightly, up a little bit. So it's just a matter of fine tuning. That's the thing with this particular style design. You do need to fine tune it because each letter and font group is a little bit different. So I'm happy with the way this looks right now. So I'm going to use the purple. This time I'm just going to select, or the purple, the orange, and I'm going to select it, and we'll go over to Edit Objects and Remove Overlaps. Look at what happens. It's going to cut away the excess tatami in the 2024 stitching. So I'm going now to remove this. We just use it as a cookie cutter, so I'm just going to simply delete it. And notice how we now have the letters all cut out. I'm going to remove this little stray piece right here. I don't need that. So, you know, look at how you want to clean up your design. I'm going to change the 2024 to a lighter density. I'll put 1.2 and we'll travel on edge. And we'll change this, the underlay to remove it. And the stitch angle we'll put at 45. We will now duplicate that. And we will change this stitch angle to 135, and it'll kind of create a diamond pattern. With this still selected, I'm also going to add a back stitch around the letters, and that will just give a nice clean edge to the letters. So we go back to Create Layouts. You can see in all of my other ESA videos that I really love the outlines and offsets because you can get really creative with those. So I'm going to turn off offsets. We'll go back to outlines. We will use the back stitch. I'm going to keep it at pink for right now. Like this, we'll move this up in the sequence docker, and then we can move this up as well. and change that back to the blue. One last thing as far as fine tuning goes. You need to, I'm going to zoom in. You'll notice that some of the stitch angles are a little funny on the satin stitches. That's because when we cut them with the overlap, it rechanged all the stitch angles. So sometimes some stitch out really nice, and other times you need to come back and just fine tune it a bit. So I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to click and select this. I'm going to hit H to reshape it, and if I come over to Digitize Objects, I'm going to add some stitch angles to kind of clean this up. So I'm going to put an angle right here, enter, and notice how that neatly that cleaned that up. So with each and every font, you need to just kind of go through, and this will be your homework, to clean up the design and to have a nice crisp stitch out. Enter, and you'll see how nice and neat. The last thing to do is select the satin stitch, and we're going to add an edge run underlay to it. Now you're ready to save your design as an EMB file and go to the head of the class stitching this out on your favorite sweatshirt.